Good evening, everyone. I would like to welcome you to the annual 3-minute thesis competition, 3MT for short. 3MT provides an opportunity for graduate students to promote their research, further develop communication skills, which come in handy for job interviews, and for the winners to earn a tuition and cash award. Joining me this evening is our Associate Dean of Graduate School and Research, Dr. Joy Bowers-Campbell, who will provide an overview of the 3MT and exactly what we are going to experience during this evening's event. Dr. Bowers-Campbell, the floor is yours.
Welcome, everyone. Created at the University of Queensland, Australia, the 3MT competition provides graduate students the opportunity to develop their professional, presentation, and research communication skills. This is an opportunity for graduate students to showcase their graduate thesis, disquisition, dissertation, project, or business plan in a 3-minute presentation geared to a general audience using only one static slide. Students submitted their narrated slide to the graduate school. We had 8 judges who scored each presentation on communication, comprehension, and engagement. Let me highlight our judges and extend a warm thank you for your willingness to serve WCU graduate students. These judges conferred and determined the first place and second place winners earlier this week. The top 10 submissions were compiled into a master video and presented on our graduate school website for the community to view and vote. People's Choice voting started on Monday, November 18th, and closed on Wednesday, November 20th at noon. After viewing our top competitors, I will announce our winners.
Before we get started, I want to recognize several people who have worked tirelessly to ensure the success of 3MT. Dr. Joy Bowers-Campbell, whom we've mentioned before, and graduate school staff members Holly Vaughn and Kate Roach. I would also like to especially thank the Graduate Student Association, who generously provided the funds for the cash awards this year. Is everybody ready? Here we go. Our first competitor is Caleb Ambrose, HESA, Ecological White Racial Consciousness Theory.
I'm part of the HESA program here at Western, and today I'll introduce you to a new way of understanding white racial consciousness. It's called the Ecological White Racial Consciousness Theory, and it's my theory. It builds on 2 existing models. The White Racial Consciousness model, developed by Wayne Rose, Sandra Bennett, and Donald Atkinson, and then Yuri Brofenheimer's developmental ecology theory. Together, these 2 theories help explain how a person and environment, things like family, community, and culture, shape their racial attitudes. The White Racial Consciousness Model, or WRCM as it's normally known as, identifies 2 broad categories: unachieved and achieved white racial consciousness. This theory focuses on achieved, and it includes 4 distinct attitudes: dominative, conflictive, reactive, and integrative. This theory will mostly focus on integrative because it's where we want all of our students to get to. Now, this is where my contribution comes in. By using Brofenheimer's ecological model, which looks at how various systems influences individuals' development. These systems include the micro, meso, and macro levels, which represent close relationships, overlapping social circles, and large societal influences. They play a huge part in shaping how an individual comes to understand race. For instance, someone who grows up in a predominantly white community with little exposure to diversity may adopt a dominative attitude. This is marked by feelings of superiority, oppression, and just looking down on people who are different. On the other hand, individuals who grow up with a diverse relationship and engage in meaningful interactions with people of color or anyone who's different are more likely to develop an integrative attitude, which acknowledges racial inequality and supports social justice. This is the goal, integrative. The role of higher education is particularly important here. Colleges often serve as a major turning point where many white students encounter diversity for the first time. This exposure can significantly alter their racial consciousness, move them towards a more integrative and socially aware attitude, which is great for the entire community. My theory emphasizes that racial attitudes do not develop in isolation. They are shaped by social and cultural forces around us. And by understanding these ecological influences, educators and higher education professionals can better support students in developing a deeper, more conscious understanding. And also, understanding where a person has come from can also help professionals better support students in developing a deeper understanding for race. Thank you.
Hunter Bishop, chemistry. Characterization of larva 64 Prim-Pol activity and endogenous protein-protein interactions.
Hello, everyone. My name is Chase Bishop. I'm a grad student here at WCU, and for the past 2 years, I've been doing my thesis research with Dr. Jamie Wallen, that being on the characterization of larva 64, Prim-Pol activity, and endogenous protein-protein interactions. Larva 64 is a DNA replication protein from the bacteriophage larva. Bacteriophages are viruses that infect solely bacteria, and while viruses have kind of gotten a bad rap in the past few years due to, COVID, these viruses, they're the good guys. They infect bacteria and can therefore be used as an alternative to antibiotics and potentially against antibiotic-resistant bacteria, which is why we do so much research with them here at WCU. For them to be effective treatments, though, for a bacteriophage to be effective, it has to replicate its viral genome. To replicate the viral genome, it needs a helicase, which will unzip double-stranded DNA, to which the primase synthesizes a small RNA primer, as I like to call it, a DNA saddle, to which the polymerase hops on, rides off into the sunset, synthesizing the rest of the viral genome, and then the process starts over and over again. What's really cool about Larva 64 is that it is able to do all three of these. It's a 3-for-1 bargain, or as I like to call it, a Swiss Army protein. However, a jack of all trades is a master of none, and in our research characterizing the characterizing the speed of Larva 64, we've realized it's so slow, there is no possible way it's able to replicate the viral genome by itself. It's got to be getting help from somewhere. One of the avenues we've looked at of how it's replicating its genome is whether it's handing off synthesis to much faster polymerases, similar to how the center would hand off the football to the much faster quarterback. And we've been able to show that Larva 64 can hand off synthesis to the much faster Clinal polymerase, which is a bacterial polymerase. So it may be receiving assistance from its host to replicate its viral genome. Another alternative is whether it's receiving help from proteins within the virus itself, endogenous proteins. And what we've seen is that there was an interaction between Larva 64 and Larva 48. Larva 48 is a sliding clamp protein, which essentially looks like a donut, which can hold DNA replication proteins close to DNA and can increase their polymerization activity by 100 to 1,000-fold. And we are the first group to ever see an interaction between a Prim-Pol and a sliding clamp protein, which means that Larva 64 may be going much faster because it needs the help of the sliding clamp donut. This being a novel interaction is incredibly awesome to us, and we were even able to model it using AlphaFold to see that our Prim-Pol and the sliding clamp protein can work together and surround DNA. Thank you for your time, your consideration, and as always, go Cats!
Haley Bradshaw, school psychology. Teachers and pre-service teachers' perceptions of giftedness.
I'm sure that some of you watching this were in a gifted education program at your school when you were younger, or maybe you know somebody who was. But do you know how you or the person that you know got into that program in the first place? We set out to explore that through researching teachers' perceptions of giftedness, as well as connect it to why some gifted students aren't getting into these programs to begin with. You might be wondering, why are we investigating the attitudes and perceptions of regular classroom teachers when talking about gifted programs? Because teachers are often the first step in identifying gifted students. Once referred, gifted students are often identified by scoring above a certain percentile on a standardized assessment. And a lot of schools use teacher referrals to determine which students should be referred for this testing. The problem with this is that in many gifted education programs, the number of minority students enrolled in the programs is lower than it should be when compared to the number enrolled in the schools. This is also known as underrepresentation or disproportionality. This is likely somewhat because of the lack of teacher referrals for these students in the first place. And teachers may fail to refer minority or economically disadvantaged students for several possible reasons, such as not being able to recognize unique characteristics of giftedness, or not considering the effect outside circumstances can have on a student's achievement, like not having enough food at home or moving frequently. Or they simply just might have low achievement expectations for minority students from the beginning. The reason that we're looking into this is that there was a previous study on this topic that suggested that teachers who participated in the study did not appear to have a well-developed understanding of giftedness and its characteristics, despite attending trainings on it and teaching gifted students themselves. So what we can conclude is that there's a failure to refer some students due to teachers' perceptions of them, and also in some cases perceptions of giftedness as a concept, whether that's conscious or not. After surveying graduate and undergraduate students, education students at Western Carolina University myself, about their perceptions of gifted students, I found that 74 or more of the participants agreed with positive characteristics being characteristics of giftedness, like being self-motivated, learning easily, loving challenges, things like that. But less than half the participants agreed with more negative characteristics being potential characteristics of giftedness, like being bored in class, unmotivated, or having frequent behavior problems in the classroom. And a lot of those characteristics reflect common cultural differences in learning styles among minority and economically disadvantaged students, and those are often misinterpreted negatively by teachers. Even though some other responses from the respondents in our survey reflected in an awareness of culturally diverse practices within the classroom, and almost 90% agree that to effectively teach students, one needs to be aware of cultural differences present in the classroom.
Isabel Couture, HISA, International College Student Perceptions of Access to Outdoor Recreation.
Hello, my name is Isabel Couture, and for my 3-minute thesis, I'm going to talk about international college student perceptions of access to outdoor recreation. So, involvement in outdoor recreation can play an important role in the well-being of all college students, but specifically international college students, who are in the process of making cross-cultural transitions. During these hard transitional times, international college students face heightened feelings of isolation, loneliness, stress, anxiety, and etc. So, it is important for the university to help these students help international students become more acclimated by providing them more access to outdoor recreation as well as intramurals. By doing this, this would help the students foster social connections and decrease all the feelings of stress, anxiety, loneliness, and isolation that they may be feeling. So for my research project, I had the Office of Global Engagement send out my 23-question Qualtrics survey to all 136 students on campus. Of the 136 international students, 15 students completed the survey, giving me an 11% response rate. The students who took the survey were from countries ranging from Germany to Pakistan. In the survey, I asked questions relating to generalized questions on perceptions of their access to outdoor recreation, to questions of what kind of barriers inhibited them from participating in outdoor recreational programming and intramurals. What I found was these students were facing 3 main barriers. These barriers included time restraints, not having enough or adequate transportation, as well as not receiving adequate information relating to what's going on regarding outdoor recreation and intramurals. 100% of the respondents said that if given more information and resources, they would be engaged in outdoor recreation and intramurals, but felt that the university was not doing a good enough job doing so. So I was pleased to find out that my research aligned with research that's being conducted on a much larger scale, showing that international students across the country are also facing these 3 main barriers of time constraints, lack of information, as well as not time constraints, lack of information, and transportation, So, though my study was small, I believe that my research is important because a lot of times international students are a group on campus that can be neglected and looked over because of their small numbers. But considering the campus theme at WCU is community and belongingness, I believe that student affairs professionals and campus rec personnel can do a better job helping these students get involved in campus rec and help this campus community be more inclusive. Thank you.
Christina Gray, chemistry. This is rubbish.
What is something that is all around us that people make but we cannot see? Microplastics. But what exactly are microplastics? Well, first we need to start with what plastics are. Plastics are a group of materials that are made up of a variety of synthetic chemicals that contain polymers. Plastics are used in a variety of everyday products, from the clothes we wear, such as fleece and nylon, to food packaging, like styrofoam or polyvinyl chloride, to the cars we drive and everything in between. This miracle product was invented in 1907, but the term microplastic wasn't coined until 2004, almost 100 years later. Microplastics are plastics that have been degraded down to 5 millimeters or smaller, which is about the size of a grain of rice. This degradation is done through biotic, living, or abiotic, non-living factors, such as a microbe munching on plastic, sunlight exposure, and even washing your clothes. Currently, microplastics are being found from the top of Mount Everest to the bottom of the Marianas Trench and everywhere in between. And yes, even in us. So what does this mean for human health and the environment? Well, researchers are still trying to figure this out. Some potential health effects are neurotoxicity, carcinogenicity, genotoxicity, decline in reproductive health, and more. While the impact on the environment can be just as harmful, leading to an overall decline in ecological function. Microplastics are a unique emerging pollutant because their scope is so far-reaching and their impacts are still not fully understood. This is where my research comes into play, where I ask, what types of plastics are we finding in the environment? To get to the bottom of this question, I'm developing an algorithm to use FTIR data to determine what types of plastics are being found. FTIR looks at the chemical bonds through absorption of infrared light and produces data that then needs to be interpreted. Essentially, I will be developing a method that can read that data by applying multivariate statistical techniques to determine what plastics are being found in samples. So this leads me to the good news. This research is just the beginning of something much bigger. As more research is done, more people are able to learn, and that is when change happens. It is so important to understand how plastic pollution affects the environment, and this research brings us one step further. I am eager to help solve the mystery of what microplastic chemicals are lurking in our environment. Thank you for watching, and remember, stay curious.
Daniel Hamill, Clinical Psychology. The moderating effect of perceived peer exclusion on weight stigma and physiological arousal in adolescence.
Hello, my name is Daniel Hamill, and I am a graduate student in the Clinical Psychology Master's Program, and I will be discussing the moderating effect of perceived peer exclusion on weight stigma and physiological arousal in adolescence. Consider that for centuries we have continued to find ways to alienate and discriminate against those who do not meet society's ideal image, especially adolescents. During adolescence, people begin seeking the approval of society and their peers more readily, and this is in part due to the increasing importance of peer relationships as they grow to seek more independence and personal identity. Weight stigma has a negative impact on the psychological and physiological well-being regardless of age. However, experiencing this stigma during such an important developmental period has widespread implications, especially if we consider that this is the time period in which our bodies require additional weight to initiate puberty as it is. And there's currently a hole in the area of research due to that most studies focusing on children are on the extreme ends of the weight spectrum. This study sets out to fill some of those gaps by removing the exclusionary criteria of having what would be perceived as a normal weight, as these children are also being exposed to weight teasing and bullying that takes place even if they may not be the primary target. Previous research has found that the physiological reactivity of individuals who have endured significant discrimination is heightened to a level that causes dysfunction in everyday life. If we consider things such as anxiety and PTSD, these are psychological disorders which have a strong association with one's physiological response to their surroundings. However, not all individuals who are faced with weight stigma grow to have this autonomic dysfunction. Based on the idea that our peers help us shape our view of ourselves and the world around us, I believe that peer relationships, whether true or perceived, will alter the degree in which weight stigma impacts these individuals. Therefore, I believe that adolescents that endorse high levels of peer exclusion, such as being left out of activities or not being liked by their peers, will feel the effects of this weight stigma more readily. This study will utilize a peer-based discussion in which the participants will discuss their experiences with weight stigma. The use of peers instead of a confederate is due to the belief that the discussion of these experiences with a friend or a peer will have a more prominent effect on the student and better simulate their day-to-day responses to these experiences. The overall goal of this research is to assist in gaining a better understanding of how peer relationships impact specific negative events that occur during such pivotal developmental periods, especially when we take into consideration the increased prevalence of weight stigmatization in the media.
Lynn Hudson, Fine Arts, Handmade Paper Pulps in Sculptural Practices.
Have you ever asked a question that led to 10 more questions and then 10 more questions and then 10 more questions? Well, that's how my summer research was. My original question was, what pulp formulas are the best for making sculptural work with handmade paper? And what I found out is there are many, many questions that have to be answered before I can even get to that. One of the things is techniques. And there are 3 different techniques that I looked at: pulp casting, sheet casting, and embedding. In addition, the materials, the types of pulp, am I going to use cotton, hemp, abaca, or flax, and how that's created in a Hollander beater in a professional studio. What are the beat times? What are the Hollander settings? And that affects the materiality of the pulp. In addition, each pulp type has its own strength. It's either a short fiber or a long fiber, and that all affects the drying time, the working time. Drying techniques turned out to be really important. It's something I learned during this process. Are you working against the nature of the fiber in the paper, or am I working with it to help with the object that I'm creating? My academic research included finding books and professional journals, as well as interviewing contemporary hand paper making artists who either worked in 3-dimensional work or worked in ways that I thought would help with 3-dimensional work. My testing in the field, I made paper in a professional studio and a garage studio, and I learned that you can do it in both. And I worked with different pulps: abaca, flax, and hemp. I used different materials for armatures, such as bamboo, wire, and found objects. And I also learned about the nature of the fibers. The ore that you see in that picture was cast with abaca that had been beaten for 8 hours, and it has nice translucency, and I could add colors. And then the chair was cast with abaca that was beaten for 3 hours, and it has much more strength and opacity. So even though it felt like each answer created 10 more questions, I did come up with answers for my professional art practice. I found that I have material preferences. I enjoy working with flax beaten at 8 hours. I like the high shrinkage and that strength. And I like working with abaca that's beaten at 8 hours. So I think 8 is my magic number. That also has high shrinkage, and you can add really nice natural dye pigments in it for color. I like working with casting found objects. I like the way it naturally pulls out the color from the original object that I'm casting and exploring the variations of those characteristics. There's a push-pull between translucency and structure that I want to explore, and ultimately I learned that working with handmade paper to make 3-dimensional forms will provide a lifetime of questions to discover during my studio practice. Thank you.
Amy Kling, English. Can a classroom be a democracy?
Can a classroom be a democracy? When most people think of a democracy, they think of equality. One person, one vote. Every voice matters. In most classrooms, power isn't equal. The teacher is in charge, and the students show up, listen, and learn. Not very democratic when you think about it. Now, you might be wondering, why does it matter if students have power in their classrooms? I mean, the teacher's the expert, right? Well, I work in community education, tutoring adult learners with low literacy skills and/or English language proficiency. Many of these students didn't complete a high school education because they were overlooked, mistreated, or undervalued by the school system. Standard educational settings just didn't work for this student population. In addition, most of the students I work with are older than I am, and all of them have a lot of life experiences, skills, and challenges that I don't share. I may be an expert in literacy education, but when it comes to their lives and what skills and lessons would benefit them most, my students are the experts. So their opinions about what they learn should matter at least as much as mine. So what might a democratic classroom look like? Last fall, I designed a technical and business writing course based on the idea of a democratic educational space. The students get to help create the syllabus. They decide what they learn. They have agency over their education, sometimes for the first time in their lives. In the spring semester, I recruited students, and over the summer, I taught the class for 12 weeks. I learned a couple of very important things. For one thing, democratic engagement is exhausting. Adult learners have a lot to deal with. They have jobs, homes, families, endless responsibilities. When they sign up for a class, some of them would rather show up and be told what they need to know instead of making even more decisions. But let me introduce you to one student who I'll call D. D never liked school. He felt disrespected and, like other teachers, thought he was stupid because of his learning disabilities. In this class, D loved being taken seriously. He loved that he got a choice about what and how he learned, and that he got to learn about things that were important in his life. By the end of our class, he was talking about signing up to take his GED exam and then enrolling in more classes to keep learning and growing. So, can a classroom be a democratic space? The short answer is yes. My class worked really well in some ways, and it fell short of my goals in other ways. Democracy in action is hard work, and it requires teachers to balance giving choices and freedom to students without overwhelming them. It's much easier to accomplish this in a small class or one-on-one tutoring session than in a class with many students. It's also much easier to put into practice in person than it is online. And maybe most importantly, it requires teachers to keep learning, stay humble, ask questions about what's working, what's not, and how we can continuously learn and improve alongside our students as equals. Thank you.
Brooklyn Rogers. History. Transforming Treatment. Highland Hospital's Legacy in Healthcare.
In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the United States saw a rise in mental health care facilities. One notable facility, which is the topic of this thesis paper, is Highland Hospital. Founded in 1904, the hospital treated disorders such as schizophrenia, compulsive disorders, and other major and minor illnesses. My research explores the rich history of this institution in Appalachian healthcare, its pivotal role in public health, and how its both innovative and controversial practices shaped the care that we see today. This facility, which was in Asheville, North Carolina, was uniquely positioned in the heart of Appalachia, a region historically underserved in terms of mental health resources. The geographic and cultural context presented both challenges and opportunities for hospital staff. Appalachian community, often isolated and facing economic hardship, had limited access to specialized care. The mental health issues were deeply stigmatized, and many patients suffered in silence. Highland responded to these challenges by adopting a progressive approach to psychiatric care. It became a refuge for individuals facing mental health crises, offering treatments that were groundbreaking for the time. The hospital also attracted people from other parts of the nation to seek treatment there, due to its location and treatment options that focused on recreational therapy, such as outdoor sports, gardening, woodworking, and other treatment options. The hospital didn't just treat mental illnesses, it worked to integrate care with an understanding of the unique social, economic, and cultural factors that influenced health in this region. The significance of the location is clear. This is a place where mental health services were scarce. It became a beacon of hope for some. The hospital's legacy, it's intertwined with its dedication to the people of Appalachia, where it forged new paths in treatment and made a lasting impact on mental health care for rural and underserved communities. This history is more than a timeline of achievements. It's a blueprint for modern healthcare. Highland Hospital's ethos of innovation, combined with its commitment to serving the underserved, reflects the very challenges that healthcare systems face today. The hospital's legacy teaches us how adaptability and patient-centered care can lead to long-lasting impacts. In just 3 minutes, I can only scratch the surface of Highland Hospital's incredible history, but my research shows that looking to the past can guide the future. By learning from institutions like Highland, we can continue to improve healthcare for all communities. Thank you.
Dana Sain, Doctor of Nursing Practice. Be a superhero.
Imagine the younger you. You have a cape, maybe a cool mask, you're running around, saving the world as a superhero. What if I could tell you that childhood dream of being a superhero? It's not lost. Imagine you're walking across campus. It is a beautiful day, and across the quad you see your friend Annie. You wave, but something seems off, and you watch in horror as you realize that she's collapsed. You run over, she's unresponsive, she's not breathing. How can this happen? She's a healthy adult. People around you are panicking. What do you do? Unfortunately, this is a reality that's happening on more and more college campuses every day. The National Institute of Drug Abuse reports that each year over 100,000 lives are lost to opioid overdose. The CDC reports that in the 5 years between 2018 and 2022, that there was a 34% increase in opioid overdose deaths among people ages 18 to 24. Our campuses are at risk. This can be due to increased stress, increased ease of getting prescription medications, or often fentanyl-laced products, meaning people are unknowingly and unwillingly ingesting fentanyl and overdosing, often on medications that they think are just normal and they've taken often. So go back to Annie. What if I could tell you that you could save Annie with something as simple as a nose spray? It can be carried in your backpack. It can be with an AED machine. It is safe and can be administered. This medication is called naloxone, also known as Narcan. It is safe, easy to administer, and within minutes can reverse the effects of an opioid overdose. It is a life-saving medication. This program implemented an education program on the campus of Catawba College in Salisbury, North Carolina. Studies have shown that by educating faculty and staff on overdose awareness, signs and symptoms of overdose, and naloxone distribution, that it increased the confidence and the willingness to act in the case of an emergency. This is something that is vital. Many college campuses do not have an overdose education program, and it's essential that we change that. Don't wait for a body bag to be needed for a student or a faculty member or a staff member before we come up with a plan and act. There's power in naloxone. It is a powerful drug that can save lives, and there's a critical need for overdose awareness and implementation of education programs on college campuses. We need to make college campuses safer. Every life matters. Every faculty, every student, every staff, every life matters. So, go be a superhero.
I am delighted to announce the winners of our 3-minute thesis competition. Second place, from the chemistry department, second place goes to Christina Gray. Congratulations, Christina. First place, and representing Western Carolina University in our regional competition in the Council of Southern Graduate Schools, drumroll, Haley Bradshaw from School Psychology Program. Congratulations, Haley. Again, from the dean, myself, and the entire graduate school, thank you to everyone who made this event possible. It is always a good time to showcase the fascinating work of our graduate students and their graduate faculty.